All right, welcome back out to Hog Mountain Baptist Church. If you would, stand and turn to page 286. Sing the Glory Land Way. I'm in the way, the bright and shining way. I'm in the Glory Land way. Telling the world that Jesus saves today. Yes, I'm in the Glory Land way. I'm in the Glory Land way. I'm in the Glory Land way. Heaven is near and the way groweth clear, for I'm in the Glory Land way. Listen to the call, the gospel call today. Get in the Glory Land way. Wonders come home, oh, hasten to obey and get in the Glory Land way. I'm in the Glory Land way. I'm in the Glory Land way. Heaven is near and the way groweth clear, for I'm in the Glory Land way. Onward I go, rejoicing in His love. I'm in the Glory Land way. Soon I shall see Him in that home above. Oh, I'm in the Glory Land way. I'm in the Glory Land way. I'm in the Glory Land way. Heaven is near and the way groweth clear, for I'm in the Glory Land way.
Amen. Good to see everybody out this afternoon. I'll go over the announcements for you here real quick. There they come. I was looking for them. Men's breakfast first Saturday of each month. Arrive at 7:30 to help cook. 9 o'clock to eat. And by the way, that is in the church fellowship hall just down the way. And don't forget about, we are collecting donations for Calvary's Children Home. Please bring them in. You can put them on the back pews, on the side, or wherever, and we'll get them to where they need to go. And then birthday lunch for Dr. Justin Twiggs. After Sunday morning service on September the 10th. So we'll have our normal service, Sunday school here. And then following that, we'll be having a birthday dinner after that down in the fellowship hall. And then ladies' conference will be Saturday, September the 16th. That's here at the church in the sanctuary from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. That's getting on us pretty quick, so y'all keep that in your prayer. Happy birthday, Jacob Page, which I think was yesterday. Brother Jody Rogers is today, right? Happy birthday. You want me to sing to you, brother? Probably not. Anyway, happy birthday. So y'all remember all these announcements. You also keep Miss Olivia in prayer. I got a chance to run by and see her right before church. She had surgery today. She wasn't doing so good earlier. She's doing pretty good on the couch. Just talking was trouble, and I know that's what she was wanting to do. She's hurting a little bit doing that. But y'all just keep them and that family in your prayers. Keep Miss Angela Tanner in your prayer as well. And I know I'm missing some, and your preacher will take care of the rest of what I'm missing. But we'll go to the Lord in prayer. We'll get started. Brother Danny, how about you lead us in prayer? Yes. Yes. Amen. Thank you. You can be seated.
Right, you can be turning to page 317. Sing His Love Lights the Way. I've left the old paths I traveled so long. I'm happy, redeemed, and free. Of Jesus the Lord I sing a sweet song. His love lights the way for me. His love lights the sadness is past. I'm happy at last. His love lights the way for me. Each trial, Lord, comes as strength to my soul, and faithful I'll ever be. The billows of grace now over me roll. His love lights the way for me. His love lights the way. I travel today. I'm shouting the victory. My sadness is past. I'm happy at last. His love lights the way for me. All right, flip over 162. We'll sing Living by Faith. I care not today what the morrow may bring, if shadow or sunshine or rain. The Lord I know ruleth for everything, and all of my worry is vain. Living by faith in Jesus above, trusting, confiding in His great love. From all harm safe, in His sheltering arms, I'm living by faith and feel no alarm. Though tempests may blow and the storm clouds arise, obscuring the brightness of life, I'm never alarmed at the overcast skies. The Master looks on at the strife. Living by faith in Jesus above, trusting, confiding in His great love. From all harm safe, in His sheltering arms, I'm living by faith and feel no alarm. Know that He safely will carry me through, no matter what evils betide. Why should I then care though the tempest may blow, if Jesus walks close to my side? Living by faith in Jesus above, trusting, confiding in His great love. From all harm safe, in His sheltering arms, I'm living by faith and feel no alarm. Our Lord will return to this earth some sweet day. Our troubles will then all be old. The Master so gently will lead us away beyond that blessed heavenly shore. Living by faith in Jesus above, trusting, confiding in His great love. From all harm safe, in His sheltering arms, we'll have a moment of fellowship.
All right, at this time we'll be receiving our missionary offering. Just give as God's bless you. We'll use it to spread the gospel around the world, tell everybody about Jesus. Brother Jacob, how about you bless this?
Lord, I'm thankful for this day, God. Thank you for allowing us to come back to your house, God, and worship you tonight, Lord.
Yes.
Lord, I pray that you just bless this service, God. Bless Brother Justin as he preaches, God. Lord, help us to not just be hearers of the word, but to be doers
Yes.
also, God. God, I pray for this offering. Bless the missionaries it's going to, God. God, bless the souls that those missionaries will come in contact with, Lord. Lord, in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
All right, thank you for that. You can be seated.
All right, it's good to see everybody out. Little ones, 4 and under, if y'all want to head back with Miss Katrina. Physically. Emmett wants to go. And none of y'all are ever that excited to see me. this world's ever known. He's coming when Christ shall return again to claim his own. He's coming, my Lord is coming. He will step from his throne on high in the twinkling of an eye, and with a shout that will quicken all the born again. My Lord is coming. And when he comes, he'll not be alone. He'll bring loved ones who've already gone. They're coming. And the hour that raised Christ that day will return into the grave. They're coming. My Lord is coming. Then the dead in Christ shall rise, and we which are alive will be called up to meet him in the air. My Lord is coming. He told us in his word to watch and pray, then we'll not be ashamed. He's coming. Some will not be prepared. Don't let him catch you unaware. He's coming. My Lord is coming. When at last these eyes shall see the one who died for me, the one who paid the debt I could never pay. My Lord is coming. And when we gather there with our Lord in the air, I'll be like him, free from this sinful flesh, robed in his righteousness. I'll be like him. My Lord is coming. I'm stuck. Okay, there we go. I'm glad he's coming back to get us. I'm just glad he didn't come in that moment, because I'd have been stuck on a mic cord on a piano bench. I'd have been watching y'all flying through the air, and I'd be, wait. I know I'm saved. What's the deal here? If you got your Bibles, turn to the book of Revelation this evening. Book of Revelation, we're going to be picking up in chapter number 12. We've been doing a verse-by-verse study through this book so far. Revelation chapter number 12. Not last week, it's been a little while, because I've found it difficult sometimes with my throat, and I don't know what I was thinking singing. I guess I was thinking it'll loosen it up, but no, it irritated it, so we'll see how that goes here in a minute. But just with the ulcer, I did get a little bit of news from the doctor today. My blood work came back in, and my immune system's in good shape, so I have a CT scan of my head scheduled for next Thursday, and I think Tara's convinced they're not going to find a thing when they scan my head, and some of y'all will get that later. So Miss Jessica's already got it. I think everybody's got it then if she's gotten it, but I'll be having that done next Thursday, and then they'll be scheduling me for the same surgery that Miss Olivia had today. And as promised from earlier, I do want to give a shout out to Miss Olivia. You did a good job with your surgery. We're praying for you and hope you get to feeling better very, very, very soon, and eat as much ice cream as you can. So I think Aunt Tara got you a little bit of ice cream. Or have you gotten it yet, or are we going by to get it? No, we're going by to get it. We were going to get her some ice cream, but she's got her some other stuff. We're going to try to run by to her here in a little bit. And to her dad, who was supposed to call me when they got home and let me know and did not. I assumed if they were still stuck in traffic on 85, or Uncle Jay would have swung by to see you before church tonight. But anyway, there's that commercial for you, Revelation chapter number 12. I want to walk verse by verse through this the best that I can, as long as my throat will allow and will hold out. And the reason being, I'm of the impression from what the nurse said, I really can't do any more damage than what I've already done. They're going to take them out anyway, so wear them out while I got them, because I'm going to be in the penalty box after the surgery. Tara's going to have to get me a muzzle and keep my mouth shut, which those of you who know me, that's quite a difficult thing for me to do, is to keep my mouth shut. Hey, watch it. It does run in the family, that's exactly right. So, but in Revelation chapter number 12, we'll pick up here in verse number 1, and we want to deal with this illustration of what we have going on in heaven. And just to be clear, as we're beginning to look at this, I want to make a reminder, since it's been a few weeks since we've actually been in the book of Revelation, just due to some scheduling issues and the such. I want you to understand that we believe in our Bible first to be a literal Bible. What we read in our Bible we take as literal, unless our Bible tells us otherwise. There are people out there who take and they say, well, everything from Revelation chapter number 1 to the end of the Bible is spiritualized. You know, none of it's actual stuff that takes place. It's all just stuff. Some people say that it's stuff that happens before Jesus comes back. Other people say that it's stuff that happens inside the internal heart of the believer. And that's the one that's a little bit more prevalent here in our area, is that of, we don't take the book of Revelation literally. This is a war, and what we're going to see here in this passage is the war between good and evil within the hearts of the saved, and who's going to overcome and who's going to win. Now, we know this is a picture of something else, and we'll be looking at that as we go through these verses tonight. So look with me in verse number 1. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth, in pain to be delivered. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his heads. And his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. And she brought forth a man-child, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. And her child was called up unto God and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she hath a place prepared of God, that they should feed her 1,260 days. Now I want to pause right there, and I want to deal with these first few verses, and then we'll come back and pick up here in just a minute in verse number 7. But as we begin to look at this, sometimes we have to take a step back and look at the bigger picture of what's going on here. And we need to understand that when this vision is being seen and what's being seen here in heaven, and notice it says, and there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. Not a single time in that passage does it use the term like or as. This is an actual event that will take place in heaven. This woman will show up, and she'll be in great travail, and she'll be ready to have a child. And we know we saw Brianna right before Emmett was born, and my sister right before Michael was born. I wanted to say Carson. She changed his name a month before he was born. Threw us all out, did like a fake out move on us, and I'm still confused to this very day. What really confused me is when I walked into her house to see him the first time, and there was a Carson thing hanging over the fireplace. I'm like, why do you still have that? That's not his name. So you get all confused, but we could look at them and we could see they were near to having the baby. Because if they weren't, they were going to explode. Literally, we're going to explode. Poor Brianna, she looked like the baby was as big as her on the inside. What you see here is a woman who's in labor, who's travailing. And notice a couple of things about this woman. A woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet. So we look at this, and if we say clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, one of the first things we can find about this woman is that there is some sense of deity to her. There's something that God finds special enough for her to be clothed with the sun. Now, there's some people who are going to say, and I'm going to go ahead and run here because I want to go ahead and nip this one before it's done, well, this is Mary. She's the one who had Jesus, so this is Mary. This has to be Mary. So therefore, because it is Mary, we know that we need to pray to Mary and do all this other. No, that's not what we're commanded. We're to come boldly before the throne of grace through Christ to obtain help and find grace to help and mercy in time of need. My mind just totally butchered that verse on there, so forgive me for that. But we don't have to go through an intermediary. So let's look at this, though. Notice something else about this woman. Look at the end of verse number 1. And upon her head a crown of 12 stars. A crown of 12 stars. Where does that number 12 come in? We see it in two places. At the beginning of this chapter, you have 20 and 4 elders. There's 12 elders, which are representative of the 12 tribes of Israel, and there's 12 elders that are representative of the 12 apostles, being a representative of the church. Because what is the gospel of Jesus Christ? The gospel of Jesus Christ is the unification of the Jews being saved under Christ and the Gentiles being converted to Christ, and that unification is what is the church. That's what makes the church what it is. So if we're looking at this, and notice this in verse 2, it says, "And being with child, cried, travailing in birth, and pain to be delivered." Verse 5, "And she brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was called up to God and to His throne." Now, let me just go ahead and let the cat out of the bag here. Who is it that's going to come and rule and reign with a rod of iron? It's Lord Jesus Christ. So we know that's who it is. But if it's not Mary, who is this woman? Why is this woman travailing in pain? Why is this woman producing Jesus Christ, a man-child that's going to be able to rule the nations with a rod of iron? And then here's the real part. Why is on her head a crown of 12 stars? Well, you have 12 apostles. Well, we know it's not the apostles because the apostles came from Christ. So what's the other 12? Representative of the 12 heads of the 12 tribes of Israel. So all of a sudden we get this picture now that this woman is Israel. Now I want you to understand what we're seeing here is a literal picture, but it's going to be a representation of what's taking place on the earth. Look with me now. Look in verse number 2. "And she being with child cried, travailing in birth, and pained to be delivered." Pain to be delivered. I've never endured labor. I don't want to endure labor. I'll leave that for women. Why? Because we can't handle a cold. Much less could we handle having to give birth to a child. I had a kidney stone one time. And that one time I made my poor wife drive all the way home from work, pick me up and take me to the hospital. I'm glad she did because I almost passed out on the way to the hospital. I'd have never made it in the car. I'd have died on the road. But I felt that kidney stone. And I did not know what to do. I just wanted the pain gone and I wanted the pain away. I was in very desperate circumstances with the way that my physical body was treating me in that moment. I could not handle it anymore. I was actually on the phone with my boss when it hit. And he told me about halfway through the conversation, he said, "I think you need to head to the hospital." I'm like, "No, I'm good. Thinking I could handle it. I couldn't handle it. So I call her, take off. And they say that a childbirth pain is worse than that of a kidney stone. I couldn't imagine, but understand the pain that Israel's going through. What is it that takes place during the tribulation period? It's also known as the time of Jacob's trouble. That great tribulation period, while God is pouring His wrath out on the world for the rejection of His Son and for the way they've treated Israel, it's the unfortunate part of it that God is having to use that punishment to get Israel back to Him. He's trying to get Israel to understand they made a mistake when they crucified Jesus Christ. That they made that error when they crucified Him. So she is there travailing in pain, waiting to be birthed. But then look in verse number 3, "And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his head." And what we find is this is Satan. This is a picture, and a representation of Satan. If you look down at verse number 9, it says, "And that great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him." Now this is a representation of what's going on here. Satan was cast out. We're going to get to that in just a minute. But understand who the enemy is here. As we get into the tribulation period, and we're going to start seeing that from this chapter forward, we're going to get into the heat of the tribulation period as it occurs on the world. And what we're going to see is an Antichrist come to power. And when that Antichrist comes to power, he's not here to play patty cake. Now, let me tell you, he'll make world peace for 3.5 years. Things will be great for 3.5 years. You don't think we're close to the rapture happening? Do you know what Amazon just came out with in partnership with Whole Foods that they're rolling out? Palm Pay. Take your hand, lay it on a reader, walk out the store. You've just paid. When we get in, and this will be in a couple of chapters, we'll find out the mark of the beast is going to be placed in one of two places, either the palm of the right hand or on the forehead. One of the two places. Now, I do have to admit, during COVID, I saw one of these videos, and I've wanted to try this so bad, but masks drive me too crazy to do it. There was this guy that walked into a convenience store, and he had stuck his chip credit card, you know, the ones you can tap and pay. He had stuck that down in his mask. And he pulls his wallet out, and he's like, oh, I don't have cash. And then he did like this, wait a minute. And then he looks up, he prays, he bows, and he kisses the credit card terminal, and all of a sudden the payment goes through. The store clerk on his security camera stands there for 10 minutes kissing his credit card terminal, trying to get it to run money for free. Couldn't figure out how it happened. As great as that sounds and as easy as that sounds, and don't understand me. I'm one, and Lord knows y'all know me well enough here, I'm not one that staves off technology. I'm one to embrace certain things and to run with certain things. Apple Pay is one of my favorite things because I don't have to carry a wallet. I can hit the side of my phone twice and I can pay for something right then and there and I'm done. I'm finished. It's easy. It's simple. But they're going a little close for me. That's a little far for me. What we find is that we're wrapping up the end of this thing, and what we need to understand is the enemy that we're fighting today is the same enemy that they're going to be fighting in the tribulation period, the same enemy that's going to be in control of the Antichrist, who is going to be after the woman that bore the Savior. Not Mary, but the nation of Israel is who Satan's after. But notice, look in verse number 4 at what happened to Satan. And his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. Now, this picture is taking us back in time. What is it that took place literally when Jesus was born? What was it that happened with King Herod? That's right, not right when Jesus was born. Everybody, and I understand that, and Miss Katrina's not in here anyway. You know, we do our Christmas play, and, you know, we have shepherds come in, and then we have wise men come in. That's a difficult part to fill, trying to find wise men. That's a tough part. Brother Donald's one of the few. Yep, Brother Jody. Brother Danny. That's the three wise men that we've got around here. So, but we talk about the wise men coming. You do realize the wise men didn't come the day Jesus was born. They followed that star for a while. They actually showed up when Jesus was likely about 2 years old. And then on the way out, they go and they talk to Herod. And Herod gets concerned because Herod was power hungry and did not want to let go of what was his. And when he heard this was the king of the Jews, he wasn't having it. He wasn't having that in his Roman province. He wasn't having that where he was at. So what did he do? He decreed for all those young boys to be killed. Same thing takes place with Moses. All the way back in the Old Testament, in the book of Exodus, Moses is born. Pharaoh decides that the Israelites in Egypt are getting too populated. So he says, take all the little boys, ages 2 and under, 3 and under, I believe. I can't remember which age it was. And throw them in the river. Throw them in the Nile River there. Well, his mama bent the rules as much as she could. And she made him a little ark of bulrushes and pushed him out into the river, and Pharaoh's daughter later came and found him. What we found is that God miraculously helped them, and what we find here in this passage is a picture of what happened with Jesus, and his tail drew in the third part. Let me deal with this first. And his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven. The stars of heaven he's talking about, they are angels. When Satan fell, he took a third of the angels of heaven with him. That didn't take place right here. This is a representation of what took place. But it took place somewhere between Genesis 1:1 and Genesis 3:1. We don't know the exact time in which it happened, but somewhere during that time period, Satan got pride built up in himself, and he said, I want to be like God. Actually, I want to be more than God. I want to be higher than God. I want to be greater than God. So that pride welled up in his life. That pride welled up, and he ended up trying to become an enemy to God. And what happens later on in this chapter, in verse number 9, that great dragon was cast out. Satan was cast out of heaven. Now you have to understand, and this is something I think a lot of people forget. They think, why would God create Satan? Does that make any sense? Would we create our greatest enemy? Oh, let's just be honest. Do we really, is that our aim? Do we wake up in the morning and say, man, I really want to make my day as difficult as I possibly can? No, not at all. I don't wake up and say, man, what can I do to my day to make it more difficult? There's a few people who I think may do that. I think they're gluttons for punishment and, want the pain that goes along with the day. Not me. No, give me the easy way. I think it was Brother Scott Tanner that always used to say it. If you ever want to find the easy way to do something, find the lazy guy. And once you find the lazy guy and watch how he does it, you have found the easy way to get anything done, because he's not going to want to do anything. What we find is we don't wake up and say, God, not necessarily God, we want the way God wants for us, but I don't do everything I can to make my life as difficult as possible. I like simplicity, ease. Satan had gotten to the point he rose up above God. God cast him down. When he comes down, he ends up leading a third of the angels of heaven with him. Now let me give two warnings here. Warning number one, if Satan can convince angels that God isn't God, he's no match for you. Or you're no match for him. If he can convince a third of the angels of heaven, hey, we can take God. I promise you, you're no match for him. I love zeal. In Jacob Rogers, I could hand him a little pistol shooter water gun from Dollar Tree. Dollar Tree of all places. You have faith when you buy something from Dollar Tree. And I could have him, $1.25 tree, I forgot. I could have him charge the gates of hell and he would go full blast, wouldn't think anything of it. My dad would go too, but my dad would want a fire truck. He'd want a little more water. He'd want a little more oomph behind it. I love when people have zeal, but we need to be very careful that we walk the line. We don't tread over the line where our zeal becomes carelessness. And what I mean is not zeal in how we fight the powers of Satan, fight the powers of hell, how we fight those powers. We need to have zeal in the way, and that zeal is fine when we fight the powers of hell. But when we try to play with sin, and we think, oh, that ain't going to hurt me. It's just one drink, it's not going to hurt me. It's just one pill, it's not going to hurt me. It's just one night, it's not going to hurt me. I'll be okay. That's when we have done what we shouldn't do, what Eve did, trusted a snake. I don't trust snakes, period. Most of y'all have heard this story. I know there's a few in here who haven't. My pre-K year, we went to Alachi Nature Center. Papa Ricky, I believe, was on that field trip with me, if I remember right. He did nothing. Nothing. He was laughing. They bring out this big python. And they say, okay, everybody in the pre-K class, line up. We're going to let y'all all hold the snake. I was scared of the snake. I didn't want to hold the snake. My teacher said, you have to hold the snake for a picture. Obviously, this was a long time ago because teachers would never say that in this day and age. But she gets me over at the tail of the snake. So I'm holding about this much of his tail. He wraps his tail around my wrist and will not let go. The little, was going to say zookeeper. I don't know what they are, biologist, animal person, was over there trying to get it unraveled. They couldn't get it unraveled. So they got two people on it. They were trying to get it unraveled. My hand's starting to turn blue, and Papa is dying laughing. Since that very day, I am terrified of snakes. Still, to this day. Tara saw a snake in our garage back, about 5 weeks ago, something like that. And I was mad. Not that she saw a snake, but that she didn't keep her eyes on it to see where it went. In fact, she locked the 7-year-old in the garage and told him to go out through the front. She had the door open and said, you go out the other way. I'm shutting the door. I ain't letting this thing in the house, which I'm thankful it wasn't in the house. But you know what the worst part was? I had no idea where he was. And I've watched enough Animal Planet, and I've watched enough of these Facebook reel videos where the guy's driving down the interstate and the snake comes out of the hood and starts slithering up. You would not have a pastor. I would die. You say you would wreck over a snake? No, I would have a heart attack. Then I would wreck. I don't understand why people trust a snake. But you know what, at the same time, I look at it and I say, well, I don't understand why people do drugs. I don't understand why people lean on alcohol. I don't understand why people do all these other things. But you know what, it just takes one time for us to realize it. One of the scariest moments of my life is when I was 19 years old. I was having a gallbladder attack. I'd had problems with my hip. Even by then, it's worse now than what it was. And my mom and dad took me up to the emergency room. They got me back in the ER. And the lady came in there and she gave me a shot of Tramadol and something else. And the shot hurt. But for the first time in about 4 years, I felt no pain at all. And it scared me. For the very first time, I realized how easy it would be for me to get hooked on something. And guess what? I've done everything I can to avoid it. To the dismay of my wife when they gave me medicine for my hernia surgery, and for my parents when they gave me medicine for my gallbladder surgery right after that, I didn't want to take it. Give me Tylenol. Give me something that I'm not going to get hooked on because I'm scared. You realize we need to face every sin that way? Satan convinced a third of the angels of heaven who saw the glory of God on a daily basis and said, well, I can take him. That'd be like us putting our money on Jacob Rogers against Danny Martin. Not an even fight. Danny could do this and Jacob could never touch him. Brother Jody's like, you've never seen him wrestle. I've seen him wrestle. Yeah, not somebody that big, that's for sure. You want to talk about you getting angry? I've yet to have watched him wrestle as his pastor. But as his youth pastor, I was about ready to go out on that mat and whoop some high schooler. No, I don't have my boy in a hold like that. I didn't like it one bit. But if we paired them up, that wouldn't be an even fight. We laugh at that. We scoff at that. But that's literally what Satan was able to do with a third of the angels of heaven. But yet we think, oh, we can handle him. I'm afraid we have this picture of Satan too, that he is this character that's red with a pointed tail and horns and a pitchfork, and then he goes around just poking people in the rear end, and that's what his job is. That's not Satan at all. Satan was actually created as the anointed cherub. He had an organ in his chest. He was the music minister of heaven. Brother Cody, he had your job. That was his role. You better be careful. Don't take a third of the people out of here when you go either. Just messing with him, but that's what Satan's job was. And we wonder why the devil uses music so much to reach people. And why he uses music to deceive people and to get people off on the wrong path. That's because that's what he knows best. But he, at this point in time, carries a third of those angels of heaven with him. Those become the demons that he has today. But he was ready to devour that child. He was ready. He was doing everything he could to take Jesus out before Jesus could ever make it to the cross. That was his goal. That's what he wanted done. Why was Jesus tempted in the wilderness? Why would he be? Satan thought, man, maybe I can get one over on him. Maybe, just maybe. And the stuff he tempted him with, see these stones, turn them into bread. You know what that was a test for? It was a test for Jesus' flesh, the lust of the flesh. But understand, that's one of those, it's so easy. For Jesus, that's easy. Jesus made just that little boy's lunch turn into the feeding of 5,000 men, not including women and children. That's nothing. For him to make a couple of rocks into a few loaves of bread. Does it not drive, and this may be a man thing, I can't help it, when somebody says you can't do that? Or better yet, your wife says no, and you look at them and say, are you really going to let your wife tell you what to do? He knows where I'm going with this. Our pastor at the time was over at the house on New Year's Eve. Daddy has a 50 cal. Was it the 50 cal you shot? Yeah, it was. I thought it was. He wanted to shoot that thing into the dirt, very safely into the dirt, on New Year's Eve. My mama looked at him and said, no, you're not. Scott Tanner looked at my dad and said, are you going to let your wife tell you when you can and can't shoot your guns? Daddy didn't even say a word. He grabbed the gun, went outside, boom! yet again led away of his own lust. It's such a simple thing for him to do. He's like, well, I'm not going to let anybody tell me what I can and can't do. That's the simple test for Jesus. That's the one like, yeah, I'm going to insult him enough that he's going to prove to me that he can do it. When somebody looks at me and says, you can't lift that. My hip says no, but I say yes. And I'm going to try anyway. I'm going to do what it takes, and then mess my elbow up in the process and almost drop glass at the house. And Daddy caught me and saved me and rescued me for that one on Saturday. But I hear somebody say, you can't, and I want to do it. Satan tempted Jesus that way. But then he took him to the top of the spire of the temple, and he says, jump down and call the angels. Come get you. That was the pride of life he was dealing with there. He's saying, man, you're not going to. We know Jesus himself said, if I were to trip and fall, I could call thousands of angels to come and pick me up before I'd ever dash my toe against a stone. I wish the Lord would send a few angels from me every now and then in my clumsy moments to catch me and pick me back up. But then he tested him by the lust of his eyes and letting him look out all over the area there. And Satan says, I'll give you all of this. God already owned it all. It's such a foolish story for him to have. But he did everything he could to make sure Christ did not make it. But notice what happens in verse number 6. Excuse me, at the end of verse number 5. She brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. And her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness. Now, it says that Jesus, her child, was called up unto God to his throne. Jesus made it to heaven. You know what the fun part is? Satan ain't getting him there. Satan wasn't going to get him anyway. He was God. He was safe. It's not going to happen. But he ends up in heaven. And then it says in verse 6, and the woman fled into the wilderness where she hath a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. That's that time of the Great Tribulation. Israel's going to flee from Jerusalem. And is going to flee. And most people agree that, and I think I'm getting this name right, the city, old ancient city of Petra. When you're outside of Israel, you can go and there's a city built into a rock. There's only one narrow gap into where that city is, and it's the only way in or out. Period. The only way in or out. And the city's built up in the cliffs that are inside of that. I mean, just an amazing, I've never seen it personally, although I've got an Israel trip somewhere on my sights in the next several years before I get too old to go. But I want to go see it in person, but I've got friends of mine who have gone and seen it, and they say it's just an amazing thing to see. God has set that place aside, and it's believed that is where the children of Israel are going to flee to during the tribulation for protection from the Antichrist and his armies. And we're predicted of it right here. The woman flees into the wilderness in order to survive. Look with me in verse number 7. I'll wrap this up in just a couple minutes. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Now, I want to make something very clear real quick. While Satan was cast out of heaven, back in between Genesis 1:1 and Genesis 3:1, do you realize Satan still had to come to heaven to report to God? We know that because of the book of Job. What is it that we get to see? We get a little view into the throne room of heaven. And the sons of man, the angels, are presenting themselves before God. Guess who shows up on the scene? Satan does. And Satan has a conversation with God about Job. I'm not going to go into the conversation they had, but Satan was in heaven speaking to God. This is the point in time in which Satan is forever banished from heaven. It's kind of an odd thing to think that Satan comes to heaven. That's not like the first thing we think of. Oh man, where's the devil today? Oh, he's in the throne room of God. That's just not logically where I would go with that. Logically, I would say, well, the devil belongs in hell. That's his place. That's his home. That's where he's built his kingdom. That's where all of that is. But no, he still has to present himself before God. But when they make war with heaven and Michael wins, they're going to be cast out. And I love the description they put there. That old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. Later on, I'm going to ruin the fun. Excuse me, later on, we're going to see that everybody's going to walk by Satan when he gets ready to be cast into the bottomless pit. And they're going to say, this is what gave us trouble? This is what the whole entire problem was? This is what the issue was? Doesn't that drive you nuts when there's some kind of really massive problem and you've been trying to troubleshoot it and solve it and figure it out, and then come to find out it's one little itty-bitty thing? It gets so difficult and so troublesome, you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do. You work on an air conditioner of a Chevy Colorado, and you work on that thing, and work on that thing, and work on that thing until Brother Jody is sick of more money going into it. I'm just messing with Brother Cody. He's worked on Jacob's truck I don't know how many times trying to get the AC fixed. And I can tell when it's working and I can tell when it's not, because it depends on what Jacob drives to the Bible college. His mama says that's too far of a drive for him to go without air conditioning, so she sends him in the Traverse up there. If he pulls up in his truck, I'm like, his air conditioning must be working, or Miss Katrina had somewhere to be. One of the two. Lily don't have air? I'm so sorry, Lily. I'll fix your air for you. You don't have heat? I can get you heat. Don't worry about that. But, and I say this in jest and joking about it, but wouldn't that drive Brother Cody nuts to do all of that and then find out it's like a bad fuse or something? It's not. Yeah, he's confident. That's not it. He's very confident. Check engine light goes off. And this is the prime example of it. And I mentioned something about this either here or at another church the other week. Me and Tara bought a Chevy Equinox several years ago. We were getting ready to leave on vacation the very next day on that thing. We filled it up with gas at Quick Trip. I was convinced I got bad gas at Quick Trip because the moment I got back in and turned it on, it started fine, idled fine, touched the gas, it would die. Turned it back on, idled fine, touched the gas, then it would die. So I had two choices, call a wrecker or idle the thing home at 3 miles an hour. Called a wrecker, to say the least. And had somebody come pick us up. I can't remember who came and rescued us, but somebody, was it Jared? Man, I shouldn't have included that part of the story. Somebody's going to question my judgment by riding with Jared. Those of you who've ever read with him, you know why. Or ridden with him, you know why. But I get that vehicle towed. I get it took over to Brother JC's shop. Brother Will takes a look at it, and he calls me and he says, "You're not going to believe this. I fixed your car." I said, "What was it? What's the damage?" He said, $35 sensor, $300 and something towing bill. Ended up going on vacation in another vehicle. All this nonsense over a $35 part. And I sit there and think, how can such a small thing cause such a big problem? We're all going to think that of Satan one day. Because we let him have so much ground in our lives. Look in verse number 10. "And I heard a voice saying in heaven, Now has come salvation and strength in the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our God day and night." And I love this part. Look at verse number 11. "And they overcame him by what? By the blood of the Lamb, and by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto the death." Now this is talking about those martyrs which were lost during the time of the tribulation, especially those tribulation saints that died, whether of Israel or some of those people who never heard a clear presentation of the gospel, but then heard it during the tribulation and got saved. They're not going to make it out of the tribulation unscathed. It's very likely they're going to be martyred during the tribulation period by the Antichrist. And this is them saying, and they're saying, while Satan was tempting, while Satan was luring, while I may have wanted to go in that direction, how did I overcome him? By the blood of the Lamb, by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto the death. They loved God so much they didn't care if death is what stood between them and that. Because think about it, for us, what is to die? For us to die is gain. You want to talk about a threat? I'm going to send you to heaven. You're going, what? I'm going to send you to heaven. Whew. I'm not going to lie. I don't like the process of dying. But I know where I'm going. Death does not scare me. Stopping breathing is what I don't want to do. I don't do well at holding my breath underwater. I can only imagine holding it until the rapture. It's not my cup of tea. You say, well, that's a really stupid way to think. It is what it is. I'm claustrophobic. I can't remember who it was. I had said something. I was like, I might just want to be cremated so I'm not stuck in a casket. I'm so claustrophobic. And she's the one who did it, and her face is already going off right now. Oh, no, you ain't. Okay, that's fine. I'll let Brother Danny weed around me for the next 50 years, and, we'll be in good shape. No, think about that. What is death to us? Death is just a transition from here to heaven. And understand, I understand that I'm not in my body when I die. I'm heaven bound. I don't care what gets done with my body. Y'all can do whatever you want to it because I'm going to be in heaven. They loved not their lives unto the death. They loved Jesus enough they were willing to give their lives for him. Look at verse 12. Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. The devil knows his days are numbered. He knows he doesn't have much time left. And let me just go ahead and tell you, I think Satan already realizes that now. He's still making his rounds in heaven, but he's not been kicked out yet. But you can't tell me that Satan hasn't doubled down. Look at the world that we live in today. Look at what we put up with in the world and the things of the world that bombard and what we have seen. And let's just be completely honest with you. We've watched the world go way off track, but then we've watched the church follow. We've watched the church go a really long way. I could pull out record books and could bring it up here and show you. If I remember right, I think it was in 1910. Our church voted someone out for attending a dance hall and participating in the affairs thereof, was the specific wording. We turned them out of the church for attending a dance hall and participating in the affairs thereof. Now, several years later, Brother Barney Williams used to tell the story about how before he got right with God, he would go down to the dance hall, and he said that they served some of the good stuff at his dance hall he went to, and the door was low, and they had a sign on the inside that said, on the outside as you're walking in, that said, duck in, so you didn't hit your head. But on the other side, it said, wobble out. Couldn't walk after you got out of there. He told about that, and he told about that experience that he had, how horrible it was. But you know what we find? The world has infiltrated the church so much that we can't even make that distinction a lot of times anymore. We can't see that distinction that's there. We can't see that separation that's there. You can go back and see in history how the church has trended more and more towards the world, and the world is trending farther and farther away from the church. If you take and go back 50 years, the world looked like the church, and the church looked like something completely different. Now understand, I'm not one, and Lord help, you can ask anybody around here and they'll let you know, I'm not one who's stuck on a tradition. I'm not one of those that, well, my great-grandfather installed that light bulb, so we can't change it. Well, that's just, those flowers have to be there because such and such donated those flowers to the church about 10 years ago. I know they're falling apart, but we promised we'd use them every year. I'm not a big traditional person when it comes to that, but let me be abundantly clear. When the Word of God calls it sin, I still believe it to be sin today. When it does not, and understand the book of Ephesians, we're to flee youthful lusts. We're to do everything we can to be as Christ-like as we can. You can't tell me that the things of this world show what we should be with Christ. We should avoid those things. We should not partake of those things. And they're giving a warning to us here, even in our day and time. Satan knows he has but a short time. But here's the thing, you've got a short time too. It's not going to be long, and God's going to be winding this thing down. Pompey's here. The mark of the beast could be tomorrow. I believe the rapture's got to happen first, but understand what I'm saying. There's nothing preventing the rapture. It could happen right this minute. There's no prophecy to be fulfilled. Well, there's no temple built yet. Yeah, I understand that, but if you are around an Amazon warehouse, one day it's trees, the next day it's dirt, the next day they're shipping packages out of there. Like, how do they manage this? It's kind of like you order something from USPS. We have no idea where it is. You order it from UPS, it'll be there Thursday. You order it from FedEx, it'll be there Wednesday. You order it from Amazon, it's already installed in your bathroom. Well, thanks. We look at the technology that we have in our world today. I was joking around at the Bible college. The number one benefit of moving to Gwinnett County outside of being 3 minutes from the church, same day Amazon deliveries. I can order something at 8 a.m. and it's sitting on my porch when I get home from work. And I'm like, I've never had that ability before. We've always lived a little closer to the sticks. Now all of a sudden down here in the big city, you know, here we come rolling down the road looking like Sanford and Sons next to all of the Teslas and everything else driving by. But man, we're having a good time. We look at what technology's done. It wouldn't be anything for that temple to get built in 2 months. Don't hinge that on, I've got time. They haven't figured the temple situation out yet. They can do that after the rapture. We may be out of here any time now. We need to be busy about God's business. Last couple of verses, and I'm done. Verse 13. And when the dragon saw he was cast into the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the man. And to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly to the wilderness into her place, where she is nourished for a time and times and a half. That's 3.5 years there of the last half of the tribulation, from the face of the serpent. And the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away in the flood. And the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the flood which the dragon cast out of his mouth. We're going to see that Satan's going to throw everything he can at destroying Israel. But yet God's going to provide way after miraculous way for it to happen. Look in verse 17. And the dragon was wroth with the woman and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God. And notice this last part, and have the testimony of who? Jesus Christ. So you're telling me the Jews are finally going to admit that Jesus is who he said he was? Yeah, they are. It's going to take them a little while, but they're going to come around to it. They're going to figure it out. You know when some of them are going to figure it out? At the very, very end, when everything's said and done, tribulation period, when I say everything's said and done, the tribulation period's said and done, and it's winding down. The Jews are going to be pressed up against the Mount of Olives. There's going to be nowhere to go. It's going to look like all hope is lost. The Antichrist armies have completely surrounded them. And then all of a sudden, you're going to hear the sound of horses off in the distance. Brother Cody hopefully has his boots on for the rapture. That's what, I can't remember which preacher it was. There was an older preacher in Gainesville. He wore cowboy boots everywhere he went. And he said, it's my rapture readiness shoes. I'm ready to ride a horse. I'm like, there you go. But I'm glad he thought that was funny too. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate that. Jesus is going to come back riding a white horse. We're going to be with him as a testimony of what's going to happen. He's going to speak, and with the spoken word, the Antichrist armies are going to die. But here's the interesting part of it. When they're trapped and there's no way of escape, Jesus is going to step down off his horse on the top of the Mount of Olives. You know what's going to happen on the Mount of Olives? It's going to split in two. All of a sudden, they're going to have a way of escape. Why? Because God will protect his people. And it's just a matter of time before God brings them back to where they need to be to come to the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. So if there's 2 things you take away from tonight, this is it. Number 1, we should be wise in knowing that we have very little time. And we should not be naive enough to think that the devil doesn't realize how little time he has too. And you know the goal of the devil isn't necessarily, and I know this is going to be a shocker, it isn't necessarily to get you out of church. That'd be great. But you know, if he could just get us to say, well, you know, I'm content with where I am. I'm happy with things the way they are. Well, my family's in church and saved, so I'm good. I'm happy. That's when Satan's actually won. That's when he's won. Complacency is far more dangerous than even you getting out of church. You getting out of church is bad, but understand you being in church and just not wanting to do anything, just saying, oh, well, everything's fine, well, God's going to take care of it all. That's just as bad, if not worse. We need to understand Satan knows time's short. We need to be ready about it, but then here's the second part of that. If we know that time's short, who have you not told that you want to tell? Who have you not told? There's got to be somebody. Family member, friend, co-worker, a boss. Sat in a meeting earlier this week. Some very powerful individuals were in that meeting. And, I've met with them several times before. There's no question they know I'm a pastor. There's no question they know where I stand on things. They know where I pastor. They're supposed to be coming to visit at some point in time. But one of the ladies on my staff at work, she got into a meeting with those same individuals. Very prominent individuals in an organization. And the third question she asked them, she looked at them, she said, "Do y'all know Jesus Christ?" And I'm sitting there like, man, she has put me to shame. I've met with these guys dozens of times. They know I'm a pastor. They know we go to church. They know I'm a Christian. They know all these things about me. How many times have I just looked them in the eye and said, "Are you a Christian?" And she did. And I'm sitting there thinking, man, you're making me look real bad. And you know what? One of them said, "Yes, I am." And the other one said, "I'm not a religious person, but I do believe." And she looked at him and said, "I'll be praying for you then." That's the zeal we need to have. Not a zeal of, man, I can handle sin, it's no big deal, nobody's going to matter. No, we need to have the zeal of everybody we meet. We need to be making them aware, hey, there's a danger coming that you don't realize. If we were up here on Gravel Springs Road and the bridge was out, if you heard my dad use this example many times before, the bridge over 85 on Gravel Springs Road was out. It fell, it collapsed during the storms. And we saw somebody driving towards that bridge. Are we just going to let them keep going and not think anything of it? Well, I hope they see. No, we're going to be jumping in the middle of the road, waving our hands, doing everything we can to get them to stop. In fact, I'm going to call somebody and say, "Hey, grab one of the buses from the church. Let's go park it sideways on Gravel Springs Road so nobody else can drive that direction." We're going to do everything we can to stop it before a loss happens. Every single person that we meet that's not saved is bound for a devil's hell. What are we doing about it? What are we doing about it? Time's short. Time's real short. As Brother Will always used to say, if God's waiting, if Jesus is coming in the car, He's got it warming up. It's just a matter of time. What are you going to do to make sure the gospel gets spread? We're standing this evening. Appreciate your attention. Appreciate you being here tonight. And we'll be dismissed in a word of prayer. Y'all continue remembering the prayer requests that we made mention of earlier. Pray for Livia Lonergan that her recovery would be swift and be quick. She had a little bit of a reaction to the anesthesia, and they won't care me saying this, but she got really agitated in the post-op room, and she looked at one of the nurses and said, "I hate it here." And the nurse looked back at her and said, "I do too, hon." Valid point. So y'all keep praying for her, because you know how much energy she has, and now she's going to be stuck trying to recover. So it's going to be like a caged animal at the Lonergan household. So y'all pray for them. Be in prayer for Brother Ryan and Miss Elizabeth. I think they're trying to get things in order tonight. They got to get kids dropped off and such. They're going to the New Manna Baptist Youth Workers Conference this weekend to get some insight and stuff from them up there at New Manna. So if y'all would be in prayer for them as they travel up there tomorrow, join that session. Brother Cody's going to be joining those virtually, and he's going to be in virtual land with Jason Garner and those folks from up there. So y'all pray for him as he's getting ready to do that. Continue to remember Miss Angela Tanner in prayer. Also got a text a little bit ago. Miss Gail Cheatham has COVID. So if y'all would remember her and Brother Leroy in your prayers. And then Miss Charity's waiting on another test result to come back. Is that right? They're waiting on the scheduling of another test. So if y'all would remember her in prayer as well. And I'm trying to make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Anybody have anything they want to add? Yes, definitely remember those from the hurricane. And brother, all your family come out good so far? So, Brother Jody and them, for those who don't know, are from Jessup. And Jessup was pretty well in the crosshairs of the thing. So y'all definitely continue praying for his family and Miss Katrina's family that are down there. And there's nowhere to run. There's no hills to hide behind down there. It's dead flat. I mean, dead flat. They took, what was it, Mount Vernon? Is that what that little community's called down there? What's the Mount? Mount Pleasant. They took us to Mount Pleasant. It's not even a hill. You go, the road goes from flat to uphill for about a half mile and then back down. And they said, we just went over Mount Pleasant. Man alive. So So y'all really be in prayer, and in all seriousness, be in prayer for them down there. It's there's definitely a whole lot of pine trees and stuff that are easy to fall down in their area. So y'all really be in prayer for them, that God would keep their hand on them as the storm passes by. But we'll be dismissed in a word of prayer. Thank y'all for your attention. Brother Cody, how about you praying and dismissing us, if you don't mind?